Hey, Rylan here at the Vic Shop. I just wanted to talk about an engine building tale while I'm working on this engine here. I got a buddy of mine that's also a Victory mechanic, and he was building a 117 big bore for a customer, and they were doing the break-in on it, and the wrist pin clip came loose from the piston and blew up the motor. And he called me and he said to me, geez, I can't believe the wrist pin retaining clip came out, and have you ever seen this or heard of this? And I'm like, no, I never seen or heard of that, and I thought to myself at the time, geez, how could you mess that up? That's a pretty big mess up to not get the piston wrist pin clip, retaining clip back in its hole correctly, and didn't really think too much about it until I was building a big bore of my own recently, and I went to put the wrist pin retaining clip in, and it makes a nice audible click when you put the clip into the piston, and that's how you know that it's in there. You kind of fish it in there, it goes clink, and you're like, oh yeah, and you get your light out and you look at it and you're like, sure enough, it's in its groove, we're good to go. And then so I'm building this other engine, and I'm thinking about my buddy that had the wrist pin clip come loose, and I said to myself, man, I better make like triple sure that my wrist pin clip is totally seated and it's it's in its right spot, just so I don't have that same issue, because God, does that suck to build up a motor and then have it immediately blow up on you. And so I went back in and I said to myself, geez, this clip, even though it's in there, I can see it's in the groove, it kind of looks like it's not totally seated all the way. I mean, I know that I heard it snap in there, and so I got a tool out, and I like a screwdriver, and I pushed on the clip a little further, and it went tink a little bit further into its groove, and it sat even farther down in, like it wasn't fully seated. And I said to myself, holy crap, that wrist pin clip was not fully seated. I almost put that motor together, and that probably may have popped out again. And I think that was on the front cylinder. I already done the rear cylinder. I was rechecking my work on the front. I'm like, oh man. So I pulled apart the rear cylinder, and sure enough, I hadn't got that clip totally seated. It was in its groove, but the groove must have been like 100 thousandths of an inch off or something, where it was just so tight that you kind of needed to force it in there to get that second click out of it. And so that motor went together fine. After I pulled the rear apart and reseated and triple checked both clips, both cylinders, and said to myself, whoo, I saved myself a bunch of hassle there, to have that clip pop out at 6,000 RPM after 50 miles or something like that. So I was happy with the way that turned out, caught myself, and then saved myself a bunch of trouble. And it's always better to catch that kind of stuff before it goes back to the customer. And so then I got this engine here, which I had already built up as a 117. I had put it into a bike, broken it in, got it all tuned up, and then the guy bailed on me. Didn't want to pay for it, couldn't pay for it, and so I had to take the engine back out, and I resold it to another customer, no big deal. But as it's sitting here waiting for it to go in its new home, I'm thinking to myself, man, maybe I should check the wrist pin clip on this engine. And I went back and forth. I'm like, God, what a pain in the butt to have to tear this brand new. I mean, this engine's got like 30 or 40 miles. Well, no, it's got like 50 or 60 miles on it from the break-in and the dyno tune and everything. And I said to myself, yeah, well, I better check it. And it's money out of my pocket, because I like to, even though I probably could have reused these gaskets, I'm going to put new gaskets in it, and all this time to take this motor apart and double check it all. And so I get the front cylinder off and look at the wrist pin clip, and it's fine. it sat right in its bore. There was no more movement or anything. That one that I had earlier must have just been a one-off, or this piston set came from an earlier batch where it wasn't 100 thousandths of an inch off or something like that. So pretty typical. And so I got the front off and it's all good, and I thought to myself, well, maybe I should just leave the rear alone, and because the front was good. But no, here I am taking the rear apart, and likely there's going to be no issue with the piston or the wrist pin clip on this rear cylinder, but here I am taking it apart anyway. That's just how it goes sometimes. So I guess I'll sleep very well tonight once I get this rebuilt and I know 100% that the wrist pin clips are totally solid. I can put this back in the new customer's bike, send it off to the other side of the country, and I won't be getting a phone call in a few weeks going, my motor's blown up, what the fuck did I pay for? So let's see what it looks like. And I don't know, it's just tales of engine building. Thanks for watching.